Hello. I'd like to offer some closing thoughts about how I like to use these 8 questions that I've demonstrated over the past couple of videos. Um, as I developed them and as I began to use them myself, I realized that the way I use them changed. And I use them in different contexts. For example, sometimes I found that I was answering certain questions the same way each time. For example, if you find that every single reed that you test with these questions is sharp, or every single reed that you test is flat, then you can look into the end dimensions of your reeds. Perhaps you're clipping your blanks too long or too short. Perhaps your shape is too wide or too narrow. If your E, F, and C sharp are consistently sagging every single time you test these reeds, perhaps you need to look into having a thicker end thickness of your profile. That is something that, that is a way that you can use these questions to determine whether the end dimensions of your blanks are effective for what you want to do with your playing. Also, I discovered that one of the most effective ways that I have used these questions is to determine whether a reed was suitable to go from my practice pile to my performance pile. These questions can determine whether a reed is responding or tapering and playing in tune, of course, among many other things. But I believe that we make our reeds primarily for response and intonation, as I've said before. If a reed is not responding or tapering, or if it is playing out of tune, it does not make it into my performance box. If it changes and the response improves, and if the intonation improves, then it could potentially make it into my performance box. But if any of those qualities are not, if either of those qualities are not where I want them to be, I know that it is merely a practice reed at that point in time. Of course, I use these 8 questions at any point in a reed's life, whether it be the first day or right before I have to play a dress rehearsal for a huge bassoon solo. I will always want to check in with how a reed is playing, and I have found that these questions are a very effective way of doing that. So the point at which I'm more inclined to move a reed from the practice pile to the performance pile is when the response and intonation are as they should be. So, in closing, I would like to say that there's a great amount of inconsistency in bassoon cane, as we all know. Bassoon cane is a blade of grass. It is a natural substance, and therefore there's a certain degree of randomness attached to it. So we have to find the pieces of cane that, of course, respond to the trim and keep the trim, as Norman Herzberg would say, meaning when we make an alteration, it does change the reed, and that after a while, it does not go back to its previous way of playing. So I feel that these tests that I have described offer a way to find consistency within the inconsistency of bassoon cane. No matter what the state of bassoon cane that you're dealing with, your reed always has to have a degree of response and taper that is acceptable. Regardless of the inconsistency of the nature of the cane that you're dealing with, your reed always has to play with good intonation. If you are playing, for example, a very high note solo, for example, Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, your reed cannot close up in the high register, no matter how inconsistent your cane may be. If you are playing a low note solo, for example, Mahler's Ninth Symphony, regardless of the inconsistency of the cane that you are dealing with that week, your reed cannot be hesitant in its low note response. So I think that amidst the chaos and randomness of bassoon cane and all of the variables that we as bassoonists deal with on a daily basis, these questions can offer a consistent method to find the reeds or the pieces of cane that respond best to trimming and alteration, and that give you the best chances of successfully playing what you need to play. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope that it helps your reeds play much, much better. Thank you so much.